now 6 minutes starting time.
Erica,
Yes.
in terms of the lecture delivery, can I request you something? Can you
Yes.
please go a little slower in terms of the content delivery and just provide us with more examples because I had quite difficulty in understanding the last lecture, and I know these things are really important for us to do our assessment too. So do you mind going a little slower and providing us with more examples, if that's okay?
Yes. Yes. Definitely. So if you have any questions with any of the lectures that we have done here, please feel free to ask me, and I'm happy to go over it again.
Sure. And the second issue I want to bring your attention to um, is in the modules because I can see there is only one module left after this one, which is risk management. Do we have more lectures after the risk management, or the risk management would be the last one?
Okay, so we do have one more change control. So your assignment has both risk management and change control included. The last assignment, assignment 3, which is individual. And I'll talk about that next week.
Okay. Okay, no problem. Thank you.
No worries. Okay, so this week will be a little bit of a combination of human resource, and if we have time, I might touch on risk management as well. And that element of human resource will be included in your assignment 2B. So you have stakeholders communication, you have procurement, and you have human resources. So human resources is quite close to what we've talked about in terms of managing people in a project. But then there is a slight difference between managing people that are considered your stakeholders and those who are actually considered your human resources. So this is a little bit of a scenario here. Catherine is a project manager for a startup company called Enroll, which has rapidly established its operation in Australia. The company offers innovative financial services that adopt blockchain technologies. Enroll are focused on marketing their brands and establishing good network with other startup companies across 6 states and 2 territories. So it's just a setup of a company where she runs it. I mean, Catherine as a project manager. It's a new startup. She's sort of starting to recruit at the same time as well. And early in the project, Catherine develops a HR or human resource plan, which outline new staffing requirement. So when you actually look at this particular context here, remember we said last week in procurement that to start your procurement, you have to think about the make or buy analysis. So you will do an analysis about a resource, whether it's physical resource, equipment, or person, whether or not you can procure that or have that resource within your organization. If not, then you can buy it externally, so outsource it. So now, in this particular context here, Catherine is actually thinking about having new staff involved in her projects within her organization. So would that be considered procurement because she's getting them outside, or would that be seen as human resource? If you have an idea of what human resource might mean, why would that be considered human resource in that case? Not procurement, for example, or procurement, not human resource. Any idea on why, or what's the
Um,
difference between?
yeah, procurement is procuring goods and services, whereas HR is staffing requirements.
Yeah, thanks, Lauren.
Yeah.
You can procure goods and services services that will be done by certain people, so they are still human in a certain way, people. And Brendan say it depends on how they are actually involved in the project. I think that's the right answer because you might think, well, I'm procuring people, I'm getting services. Services done by who? by people. But then for human resource, you're also getting people. So now in this course, we're actually trying to understand the difference between the people that comes in as your human resource and the people that comes in as your procurement. And is there a difference between them and also your general stakeholders when we talk about stakeholder in general? So this week is about the difference between managing people in a business and managing people in a project, and what elements are considered in the five-stage model of team development. So there is the Tuckman model that's quite popular. And when you think about the Tuckman model, think about any type of teamwork that you had previously in your work, and see whether or not you went through all these five stages described in the Tuckman model, and whether or not even in your team with your assignment 2A and 2B, you went through that stages as well. And then what elements are considered in the punctuated equilibrium method or model. Okay, so any idea what's the difference between managing people in a business and managing people in a project? Is there a difference? What do you think? Anyone? It comes down to what Bandana says, depend on how we get people involved, isn't it? So now in a business, the project or the program manager is responsible for the department of people, which is quite fairly stable. So you have people there that works for you. They're there every morning, they leave in the afternoon. So it's quite stable and you work with them for a certain period of time. Whereas in the projects, people come and go. So some people will be there just for that particular project to do that particular role or service, and then they will leave. So you can understand that for procurements, they come, they do the service, and they go. When you're hiring, let's say contractors or subcontractors, they come there for a particular work, and then once it's finished or it's done, the contract is over, then they leave. But in a business or in an organization, they're there to stay. So they will stay there, they will do the work, and you manage them every day, make sure that they're performing according to what they're supposed to. So those are the one that we're interested today, the one that actually work in the same company, the same business with you, and you have to manage as well. And sometimes those people are also involved in the project. So they work for your company, but they're also part of the project. So you have to know how to deal with them, whether you are in the company or whether you are in a project with them. So according to PMBOK, we have four key processes, and those key processes include you have to develop a human resource plan. So as early as you start hearing about the project, in the initiating stage, when you have the first contact with your client and sponsor, you start to think about who will be involved. Perhaps you have to think about if you have the skills in-house as well in your organization. So who will be part of that from your organization? And if you don't have any skills and expertise in-house, you can start about recruiting people. And this recruitment here is not procurement because you're recruiting them to perhaps stay after the project. They're not just coming to work on the project and leave. And then you're starting to form a team, the mix of those who come from external organization or perhaps external fields of expertise. And then they will join your organization to work on that particular project. That's the second step when you acquire a project team. And then you develop your project team. Here, that step is about making sure that they're actually doing the work. So there are ways you could encourage your team to be actively involved in the project. They're not just there to work in your business, but also there to perform in that particular project. And number four is managing those teams, managing their performance and making sure that they're doing the actual work. So those are the steps or the four key processes according to PMBOK. But when you actually acquire a team, you need to identify the skills that are required and bring people into your project to form a team. And we're talking about that in the next few slides. So first of all, the first step is you have to think about how you would develop your human resource plan. So who will be involved? So that's quite early. First time you hear about the project, you think about who will be able to be involved to do the job and which particular job you need people from your own organization to be involved and do the job. And this is quite something that is done very quickly because it's time associated. If you don't have the required skill, you might have to require to recruit, and that might take a long time. So you want to know sort of way early on in a project who do you have in mind, who can be involved. So you also want to think about quality team, so those that have the actual expertise and knowledge to do the job. So sometimes you might be prepared to wait because you won't find those people in your organization and you would have to hire them externally. And it's a whole process behind it. And it's required quite a lot of resources as well. That's why the HR department play a vital role in an organization. So sometimes you will acquire the team based on your previous experience. If you've done the project before, you know who you might need to be involved in the project, what sort of skills and expertise you would need. And perhaps you might want to assess whether or not it's something that it's cheaper to do by having someone coming to work permanently in your company and your project, or perhaps just hire them as procurement, where they just come in and do the job and then leave. That's something that will require a bit of expert judgment and also expertise. Okay, so in terms of acquiring a team, usually it's about bringing a person or bringing skill sets into your Okay, I think Brandon made a good point here. Sometimes HR doesn't have the skills in the area that you want to recruiting. So you hire the services of a recruiter to find someone. Yes. So perhaps in small firm, HR won't have that expertise and you might need. What I noticed with academic role in university, usually they have a big, huge department of HR. They will probably have the skills because they've worked in the academic sector for a long time and they know what sort of skill or courses will require. But for small company, if your HR don't have the expertise, you might even get an external recruiting agency to bring you the people or the person that is required for that particular job or project or even role. Okay, so you do a pre-assessment, which is looking at the existing employees that you have in your organization. Perhaps if they have the required skills or knowledge. This is actually to save money and also to use the capacity and the knowledge that you have in house. It's a little bit the same principle with procurement. Because if you remember in week 2 with the triple iron triangle, project is said to be successful when you are within budget, time, scope, and the overall quality. So even in recruiting, you have to think about whether or not you have the capacity in-house. If you do have, there is no point of you recruiting. There will be more work and more money. But if your pre-assessment shows that there is a need for you to recruit external people, then you have to do that. So project manager may need to negotiate with other project managers if you have a project organization. If you remember in week 2, we talked about organizations that are divided into projects. You might want to even use some of the skills from another department to come to your department as well. That's one way you could do that. But if no internal resources are available, you might need to recruit externally. And that could be done through your HR department or a private agency as well. And nowadays, we do have virtual teams, like people that work overseas and that can be involved as well. That's actually extends the field of recruitment, particularly looking for one set of skills as well. So that's also one option. So with acquiring a team, we talked about finding people within your organization. So that's internal hiring, where you go to different departments looking for skills, experience, knowledge, qualification, and other set of project skills that you might need. and perhaps you might need to train them slightly just to join that particular project. Or if you can't find any of that, you might do an external hiring, which is recruiting employees from the field out there to an agency, to your HR department. You might want to give them a little bit of still training as well, but it takes a whole lot of process behind it to get them. So there are a lot of pros and cons for each method, internal hiring and external hiring. But it's always recommended that you do check internally before you go externally from from an external source or get an external source. Now, HR, this course is not actually focused on leadership, but human resource tend to put the project manager or the senior manager as a leader because you're the one who actually know the needs of the project and knows who will be required for this particular project. So it goes hand in hand, leadership and human resource management. And usually, you would think about what sort of problem you might encounter. This particular activity here was about that. So you think about any work that you've been involved, some of the issues that were related to human resource, and whether any leadership issues. So if you were a leader, you're leading the job, did you encounter any difficulties with managing human resource? Remember, human resources are the people that actually work for your organization and also involved in the project. Anyone want to share if you had a leadership role in your organization, managing people? What were some of the issues that you had?
Conflict management.
Yes, conflict is always conflict with people. Yeah, Lauren.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in the next few slides with the Tuckman model. Anyone as well had faced any other issue besides conflict management? Conflict is something that is
Change management
unavoidable.
was a
Yeah, change management. Thanks, Eleanor. In what way? Can you just elaborate a little bit?
I think overall it was just resistance to the change. So dealing with people, and I guess then that created conflict. And if you don't, yeah, that was my experience anyway.
Yeah. And you notice as well when you change people as well from one department to another to come to work in a
Hmm.
different project, they tend to be resistant as well
Yes,
because obviously they
definitely.
form relationship with people in other projects, in other sites,
Yeah.
and they don't want to come to the new project and be involved. Yes, so those are the type of issue you can have. You can have resistance to change, you can have conflicts as well. We'll talk about that in the next few slides with the Tuckman model. But in terms of acquiring project team, the best way to actually check whether or not you have the expert in-house is also to look into the organizational chart, trying to see who is ahead, who is below, and then within each department. Yeah, I think David made a good point here about some of the conflicts. I think different departments have different biases to achieve their own objections, sometimes at the disadvantage of other departments. Yeah, so there are always some sort of internal competition within different departments as well. And you do have cross-functional conflicts that Brendan mentioned as well. That's true. Thanks for sharing that. So yeah, what I was saying was with acquiring project team, you have to know the right organizational chart for your company and see where all the departments sit within. We looked at organizational charts. Yeah, we look at organizational charts in week 2, and it can be as simple as this, where you have a managing director on top, and then you have department where you have director for each department, like say marketing department, finance director, operating director, and then you have a HR director. But then for the marketing director, underneath you have marketing managers, and then you have the sales teams. And for the finance, you might have finance supervisors, and then you have the accountants underneath. And then for the operations director, he's looking after the production team, and underneath there are production team leaders, but also production team members as well. So you have to look into the organizational charts to see where each department sits in, who is above, and what sort of team they have in there. But while you're looking at this, you have to remember what are the reporting line, what are the communication line, and what are the different arrangements within each department and team composition. So the reporting line normally goes from the top to the bottom. So the person that is above is the one that you report to. So the sales team will report to the marketing manager, who will report to the marketing director, and who will report to the managing director. And the communication line can go any way. They can go above, they can go below, they can go left or right, depending on the sort of project or work that is actually involved. So this slide here has been slightly moved because of Collaborate Ultra, but if you look into Canvas, you can see that the lines are connected, okay? So this is a simple organizational chart, but it's done with a project in mind. With that particular organizational chart, so you do have a sponsor, project manager, financial controller, IT expert, they're all from the same organization. And that line shows that the sponsor is above. So the project manager will report to the sponsor, financial controller and the IT expert advisor will report to the project manager. So that's the reporting line. So that reporting line can also be an idea of the communication line, because when you report to someone, that's when you communicate with that. The financial controller, the best way for you to communicate would be to go through the project manager first, rather than straight away to the sponsor. So that's reporting shows you this is the person above that you have to talk first without going to the one. It shows a certain structure, the one above and above. It's like at RMIT, we have department, we have program manager, and then we have dean. So, and then we have staff, academic staff, like lecturer. So I'm a lecturer. There's different lecturers. There is junior or starting, there's senior. I'm a senior lecturer. Above me, there's a program manager. And then if I have an issue, I will go to my program manager first. And if the issue can't be resolved, he will go to the dean, to the head of school. And obviously there is vice chancellor and so on above the dean. But it rarely goes, the communications rarely goes to the vice chancellor. I don't even think I ever talked to the vice chancellor since I've been working at RMIT. So the reporting line also sets the routes to the communication line as well. You won't go to the CEO unless you go to your direct manager first. So, and sometimes you might be working somewhere for years, you will never actually encounter or even see the CEO of that company. So now this is a little bit of a complicated one. Just bear in mind that the design of the slide has changed a little bit because of Collaborate Ultra. So here you do have the gray box, which is the previous organization where we had the sponsor, project manager, financial controller, IT expert, advisor, all in the same company. It's very clear who reports to who, so who is above who. But then you do have the prime contracting firm, which is the yellow box. And for the prime contracting firm, you have a project director in that company as well, project manager, IT manager, training manager, quality manager. So they're all from the same company. You can tell that the IT manager, the training manager, and the quality manager report to the project manager. And the project manager report to the project director, because the reporting line is solid, okay? And link the one that is above to the ones below, and the one that is below report to the one that is above. That's how you read it. Now, if they want to hire subcontractors from a different firm to come and join them, the subcontractors perhaps are all from the blue organization. So you do have IT, supplier, trainer, independent auditor. So even though they are from the blue organization, in the project, they're working together. So the IT supplier will report to the IT manager in that prime contracting firm. The trainer will report to the training manager in that prime contracting firm, the yellow firm. And the independent auditors will report to the quality manager in that yellow firm. So even though you do have human resources in different organizations, when they come together for one project, they still are linked to each other to certain reporting line. So you would never see the IT supplier from the subcontracting firm, which was hired by the prime contracting firm, sort of way go to the financial controller from the gray organization. Now there has to be a certain line of reports where they probably talk to the company who hired them, to the prime contracting firm first, and then the prime contracting first will go to the IT expert in the other side and so on. But they can still have meeting all together where they actually together and communicate. But reporting is actually the management of that person. If you report to someone that is above you, that means that you have to be accountable to that person. The work that you're doing, your performance will be assessed by that person. But communicating, you can communicate with anybody in your team. But in terms of any issue related to work, that will be the person that you're reporting to that will deal with that. So that's a little bit of a complicated. Now, for your assignment two, the human resource part is for you to identify. Some of you already have your description of your cases where it says that you will be hiring this company to do the work with you. So then you have to show how would be the reporting line with your own team and with that external team, for example. That would be the way that you show your human resource. Some of you will have only your team involved in your case study, so you're not hiring any external people. Then within your own team, how is the reporting line going? And then you have to show that. So now here, normally, if you zoom in and you look into your Canvas slide, you will see that it's the communication lines are shown in dots and a little bit everywhere. For example, the IT expert advisor talks to an IT supplier who might talk to the training manager and vice versa. And the project manager of the yellow company who report to the project manager of the gray company can also talk to the sponsor of the gray company. So with those two project manager, who the one who's possibly or can possibly be considered as client representative? Can you guess? Remember when we did stakeholders, we talked about wearing a hat of project manager, client representative, and project manager from an external organization. Which one is external and which one is client representative, just by looking at it? Because the sponsor is in the gray organization, what does it tell you about the project manager in the gray organization? Is it a client representative or is it an external?
That he is client representative because he is the one related to the sponsor.
Yeah, so you can tell that the project manager, in fact, here you can have the sponsor being the client as well. He's from the same organization with the client or the sponsor, and sometimes he's working on their behalf as well. It doesn't necessarily mean he's from the same organization, but in the project, they're all related. So he's the one that is client representative. And obviously underneath him there's financial controller, IT expert advisor. So obviously they hire that contracting firm, the Euro firm, which will come with their own project manager as well, because they need a leader and their own project director. But that project manager is actually below the project manager in the gray organization. So they report to that project manager in the gray organization. But at times can also talk or communicate with the sponsor and with that project manager or anyone in that team. But the one that you respond to is the project manager in the gray organization. Now, if you look at the project director in the yellow organization, who does he report to?
The sponsor?
He reports to the sponsor, yes. So even though he's a project director in his prime contracting firm, in the project, he's not above everybody. So he has the sponsor who is above him. You can tell that he doesn't report to the project manager in the gray organization because that project manager is not above him. But when it comes to communication, they may communicate as well. But the only person that is above that project director from the prime contracting firm is the sponsor. So trying to understand in any project that you are involved, what's the relationship, the reporting line that exists between within your organization and with the external partners or organizations that are involved, even if it's they're involved through your procurement. You have to find out what's the reporting line and obviously establish a communication line as well. So the communication line can go across depending on how you have developed your communication plan, but the reporting has to be clearly seen and shown to all employees. And I know that when I started working in RMIT, and even if you go to a lot of companies, the first thing they show you is the organizational charts so that you know who you report to. And there's a big danger if you don't know who you report to, you might actually be doing jobs for everybody. I came across an organization once where I was told to do everything by everybody, and I didn't know who was above me. And that person would come and say, Can you do this?" And then the other person would come and say, "Oh, can you do this for me tomorrow? I need this back tomorrow." And another person would come and say, "Oh, haven't you finished what I sent you?" And I was very overwhelmed until I found out who was actually my direct line manager, and I was only getting all this through that person. So you have to know who the reporting line goes through and who's above you, so that it's quite clear in the project as well. So from organization charts, you can tell that there is a lot more detail involved, but most of the organization charts shows the management at higher level and doesn't go through the smaller team. Within team, you even have team leader as well. It depends on the project, depends on the organization. So sometimes you have to zoom in to see where you stand and then zoom out, or perhaps you start with zoom out from the higher perspective where you stand and then zoom in within your team where you stand as well. It's good to know who is your direct reporting line and how the communication work across the different people or organization involved in a project. That will help you as well to do your job clearly. So when we're recruiting, we have a position description. So usually you have a description that is advertised there. So that description will have the roles and responsibility of the person that is required to come because they need that particular project team to be involved and what sort of roles and responsibility. Whether you're doing internal hiring or external hiring, usually everybody will be aware of what is needed, the sort of roles and responsibility, and perhaps the required skills, competencies, performance indicator if necessary, and reporting relationship as well. So if you're getting someone from a different department to come in and work for your department, they have to know what will be their reporting line. It might certainly not be the previous reporting line. It's be completely different. So they have to be clear and aware of what will be the new reporting line for them. When we're talking reporting line, we mean the person who they report to, and also down the line who might report to them. So they need to know who is above them and who's below them if they have any sort of senior position as well. So sometimes you came across the RACI matrix for our stakeholders, but RACI matrix can also be used for our human resource where you just define the responsibility of each team member who is accountable, who need to be consulted, and need to be informed. So you notice that the person that needs to be consulted or be informed is always the person who is above. So the reporting line also would indicate who need to be consulted or who need to be informed. But then who is responsible or accountable tend to go below, so down the line. So you have to find out who would be the one accountable and who will be the one responsible for a particular role and particular task as well. So this was something that you need to do, but you can do it on your own time where you will actually look into your stakeholders, okay? So you have your stakeholder register that you might have developed for your internal and external stakeholder. So now remember, stakeholders are anyone that can affect or be affected by the project. For this particular assignment, you don't have to have all the stakeholders because the list can go on and on and on and on and on. You have the major stakeholder. So within those major stakeholder, some of them will be internal, some of them will be external. So from external organization or from your organization. Can you develop an organization chart or trying to find out which one are part of your human resource? Some of the stakeholders are there, like the one that we say from the four quadrants of the power interest grid. They have low interest and low power, which means that they're not practically involved in the projects, but they still need to be taken into consideration because somehow along the line further on they can affect the project or be affected by it. But then you have those that are very much interested and powerful as well, or just interested and not so much with power, but they are part of your project as well. So they are also your human resource. So some of your human resources are your stakeholders, particularly the ones that are internal stakeholders. And then you can draw an organizational chart. So somehow your stakeholder list is linked to your human resource. So you might actually derive your human resource from the stakeholders that you have provided if you have done that already for your assignment. So it's quite linked, and then trying to find out the one that actually form your organization or are there to stay in your organization as well and draw the organizational chart. So beyond that, when you develop an HR plan, you acquire a project team, you have to develop your project team. This task here, or step three, is actually trying to motivate them to do the job and trying to form a team. Sometimes you have people that are part of your team but are not behaving like a team. But you need to make sure that everyone that are involved in the project are behaving like a team. So there is the Tuckman's 5 stage of development, or five model. Okay. So according to Tuckman, a lot of group of people when they form a team, they go through those 5 stages. So with the 5 stages, forming is where everybody gets together. There is a bit of awkward climate, isn't it? We just got here. Even if you've been working in the organization for a long, long time, but you're coming from different department and you're starting sort of way to be together, there is that awkward climate or where everybody's a bit uncomfortable. You all get to know each other, you introduce each other, but everything is such a formality. Trust me, you actually even sitting down, you sit straight because you're not very comfortable with people and you don't really know how everyone works. So we sort of watching each other with a little bit of a suspicion, like we don't really trust each other. That's the first stage, that awkward stage where everyone gets to know each other but introduce themselves. And you see people talking about their expertise. They will be like, oh, I've done this in the past for 5 years. I've been working as a project manager in construction. I've done this part of project. People will look at you, but they don't trust you still. Doesn't matter what you say to them because that's too early. You just got to know each other. You just pretty much introduce yourself. They will look at you, they will hear you, but they won't trust you. So now, according to Tuckman, once that forming stage has moved on, there is the stage of storming where people start to accept each other. But that acceptance comes with a bit of individual conflict. Why is that? It's because people trying to prove themselves. He works for construction for 5 years, I've done 10 years, and you're accepting like everyone knows their role, their jobs. You're doing the job, but one wants to always prove that they know better than the other. So, but I've done this way. No, where I came from, we do it this way. It actually works better this way, even though you actually both have a specific set of roles and tasks in the project. But there is that storming, individual conflicts that actually happen. And according to Tuckman, team goes through that. Once they've gotten to introduce themselves, they're starting to work. There is a bit of conflict. And people view themselves as individual because they're thinking it's as if they feel like someone is watching over them. Like I have to prove that I know what I'm doing. So the first time you start working on something, I have to do it better, better than him or better than her. You feel like you're in competition with everyone there, but you technically not in competition. But that's just the feeling because you just started. So there is a bit of resistance that exists, a bit of conflict as well. Conflict, a bit of hostility too in the storming stage because when you started the work, it's like ta 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 ta. Everyone wanted to show off that they know what they're doing, and then it's only in the norming stage that relationships start to form. Why? It's because people tend to understand now that we're here for a common cause and a better cause. So let's work together. And that's when people start to notice that he's good at this and I am good at that. Together, we can make it work perfectly. So people, conflicts are appeased because it's now a team culture. You'll notice that, oh, I need this. Let me ask to John. John, can you please do this for me? Even though you're in a team, you started to work as a team. Oh, Nico, you're better with this. Can you do this for me instead? So people start to have that relationship or team culture because they realize that they're there for common cause, and that's more important than any of their individual conflicts. So that's when relationships are formed. It was really a team culture because they know each other well enough, but most importantly, everyone is actually thinking of the end goal or the end product. And that's when the team culture is actually installed. Then, obviously, there is that stage of performing. So the team is fully functional. There is a group energy. People come in, they do the job, they brief each other. So the work is going according to what is going. Obviously, there is small conflict here and there, but you're moving somewhere, and everyone is performing the task. That's when even in a team, it become a bit redundant. It's like you come in the morning, you sit down, you know exactly what you're doing, and you finish your day, be satisfied with what you've done. You've done your job. Everyone is doing the same around you as well. If there is a bit of conflict here and there, you always go back to your job because you know that's my job and I'm part of that team and I have to perform. That's the performing stage according to Tackman. So one thing I forgot to say about the norming stage as well is when people realize that it's a team in for the greater cause, they also help each other. That's they give each other hands here and there. And then the performing is when actually the work is being done, everyone is comfortable, they're going through some work or team synergy together. And obviously, at the end, when the work is done, a project is done, there is the adjourning stage. So, where people actually relax a little bit. When we say relax, I mean that they're prepared to finalize the project. So it's not about high performance anymore. It's not about your individual skill, but it's about coming together and finishing the final work. And during the adjourning, you have really strong relationship that exists between people. Trust me, that's when you call each other for coffee, you start meeting out outside of work. Everybody's very comfortable. It's not just work anymore. You become like a family for some organization or some department in the point where next time that you need a job, you always call this person or next time. So you trust each other throughout the process. At the end, you've seen how he works, how she works. She was very good at communicating. Perhaps she's good at that. You even start to be interested in their personal life, not so just work, because you form work relationships that are beyond work. So Tackman have said that. Now think about where you were before. Have you noticed those 5 stages? In terms of forming, where it's a bit awkward, people look at it with suspicion. I remember when I started my job in Sydney, working for design thinking project. The forming stage was really awkward. Why? Because it was an open plan office. First time meeting the team, and we had huge computer, Apple computer, where the person in the back can tell what you're doing on the screen. So tell me how awkward that was. I would stay straight. I would only open one window and trying to make it as if, yeah, it was so awkward in the office. I remember nobody even went. It was hard for someone to stand up to go because when you stand up, everyone was just looking at you. Where is she going or where is he going? So that was that awkward. But then we moved on to the storming stage where everyone started to be, I do this better. Oh, I'm better with Excel. No, I'm better with this software. No, I'm better. There was a little bit of a competition, I remember, because every time we had a briefing, someone would be like, I've done this, I've done that, I've finished this. And then you feel a bit bad that you haven't done as much as the other person. There was a bit of an individual conflict. And you will always sort of look into, is it finished already? Where is it at? So you're competing with someone that's completely doing a different role, but it's that feeling of competition. But then the norming, when we start to understand that he's good at this software, I am not, but I'm good at this. Let's work as a team because the project has to be finished by this time. So you start asking for help and giving help as well. So there is a strong team culture. And then there was the performing where we got used to do our jobs. We come in, we do the briefing, and everyone goes do their job. The team synergy was there. And when it became a joining point when we're about to finish the project, that's when everyone was so happy. Even the contracting from everyone was happy in their office. We used to go to coffees and lunch. The whole team would go to lunch together, and then someone will invite you over for dinner at their house on the weekend. So because we found relationship way beyond work, and obviously we kept those relationship afterwards. So you might have noticed that as well, even within your assignment when you formed unless you knew each other before this course, you would have found it a bit sort of awkward at the beginning because you don't even know how everyone works. You contact each other by email, some replied, some didn't. The storming stage, you started looking into, is he doing his work, his part, is he there at the meeting? There was a bit of conflict there. And then when you done the norming stage, started to sort of think about when the assignment is due, this is how much time we have to work, checking on each other. How far have you got with your task? I'm here, I'm a bit behind. Oh, I'm gonna have to help him or help her, and she's gonna have to help me, or and vice versa. So you're forming a team now because you know that you have a deadline. And then you start to perform, and obviously once you finish. In your case here, perhaps assignment 2B will be the adjourning stage for you because you will be definitely completing your group assignments. And perhaps for those who have formed relationship beyond work, you will keep in touch and you might see each other in other courses and you might work together again and so on. So Tagman says that, but from other company or a lot of companies that I have been involved in, I've noticed those Tagman five-stage development model. And the reason why it's good for you to know that is for you to, as a leader, if you are a leader for a project or a project manager, to know how to act or behave with your team. So perhaps you want to do some team building activity to make sure that when they are in the forming stage, everyone is comfortable with introducing themselves. You can reassure your team during the storming stage that it's not really about individual, they're all part of a team. So the teamwork is what makes the dream work. And when you are in the performing, you can still make sure that they continuously stay involved in the project and do the work that is needed. And obviously, when it's adjourned, you can always recognize those who have done or to have contributed to the project to give them prize or even acknowledge their effort as well. Okay, so I was talking about training and team building activities. Training is done necessarily to increase the skills level for a particular project or work, or sometimes to keep the skills current as well. So you want people to keep on doing the job that they're doing. So you give them a bit more training. So for some people, it will give them the possibility to sort of acquire a new skill and also perhaps enjoy a different way of doing things as well. A team building is something that is good to do to distress your team so that it doesn't feel so stressful. It's something as well they can do and make sure that they enjoy working and also interacting with others and being part of that team, socializing with the rest of the team. So ultimately, what you want to have in a project is a high-performing team. So high-performing teams are teams that have those 8 elements in there according to research. So they do share a sense of common purpose. They know that we have these tasks at the end of the day to submit or to finish or to complete. So we have to complete them. They share common purpose. It's also a team that identifies and utilizes individual talents. So everyone has something to bring to the table. It's different, might not be the same level, but it's something. So you want to use all those individual talents within your team. The roles are shared to facilitate group cohesion and morale. The team exerts energy toward problem solving. Difference of opinions are encouraged, and people feel free to express themselves. Mistakes are treated as opportunities. There's always mistakes within teams, but instead of pondering to those mistakes, or if we'd done it this way, we would have been here, we would have lost time. We could use that as a learning opportunity. So the next time you don't do it this way, but you do it a different way. And members set high standards. So if members actually want to achieve something of high quality, they will encourage each other to achieve that same objective. And more importantly, they feel like they're part of a team. That sense of belonging. It's a lot of organizations like their capacity to actually make people feel like they are part of a team. It's a really good feeling, and the work is much easier when you feel like you're part of a team where people can rely on you and you can rely on them. So now, instead of going further into organization, in your context of your particular assignment or your group assignment, would you identify your group assignment as a high performing team? And if not, or if perhaps yes, are there any of those elements here where your group, that's something that you reflect quietly, your group are showing? Is it a group where people actually share a sense of common purpose? Is it a group where you all feel like you're part of a team? Or perhaps you all have some sort of group cohesion? Or perhaps you use everyone inputs or talents or expertise, or where mistakes are treated as opportunity for learning, or perhaps each member encourage each other to achieve the objective. So think about that. If it's not, then think about how would you make with your second assignment that is due soon, your team be a high performing team. Is there anything that you could improve within yourself as a team member to make others feel like they are part of a team, or perhaps to encourage them, or to use their individual talent, perhaps use or show off your individual talent as well, and perhaps make sure that you all share a common sense of purpose. So you do have time to create that high performing team culture with your assignments. It's not too late. You have your assignment to be, but trying to think about how you would contribute to that. It's not one person, it's also every team member that contributes to make a high or to form a high performing team. So moving on, the last step according to PMBOK was to manage project team. With managing project team, you do have the task where you're monitoring team performance. So you're observing how your team are working. If the performance is going behind, you're trying to bring the performance up to the standard that you want them to be. Sometimes there is performance appraisal, sometimes there's regular review that is performed, team building activity, there's regular meetings where you can talk about previous performance, what they need to do, and where they need to go. But regardless of what you do, there are always conflicts. And according to research, we have two kinds of conflicts. We have what we call relationship-based conflicts or task-based conflicts. Okay? So with relationship, it's all about personality, what we call personality clash, where people have a certain way to behave and they bring it at work, and obviously that's annoying the other person and it creates big conflicts. For that person has tendency to be loud, for example. That's how I speak. That's just how I am. And there's another person that has a tendency to be very quiet and like to be in the background. And that person will have difficulty to interact with that other person all the time. So it's sort of a relationship-based conflict. And there are people that like to be leaders, even though they don't have the role of leader. So they give commands, they give orders, and there are people that have issue with that because of their background. They don't like to be told what to do or scream it, and that will create relationship conflict. But then there is what we call task-based conflict, where it's people competing to achieve the high standard product or task for that particular role. And the task-based conflict is something that somehow has a lot of advantage because people want to show off their competence, their ability and capabilities. They want to perform better than the other. It's conflict because there's sort of competition there, but there's some benefit in there because they've achieved the high sort of a product or job that is required. So the question is, if you had to deal with one or the other, which one would be, or would you prefer? Task-based conflict or relationship-based conflict? Anyone? I would personally prefer task-based because somehow at the end this will come down to a better standard of work compared to a conflict or relationship based because relationship based are really hard to manage. You might read older books, you might even sometime in construction site they will hire a conflict resolution person that will come and sit down and be the mediator. Even that person will come and give you all the tools. They will leave. You will still have some conflicts to deal with because relationships are sort of ingrained with people background. Some people have the way that they've been raised in their family and they like things to be done a certain way. So it's very hard to deal with. So if you have the two conflicts, trying to focus on the task-based conflict, that's the one that would actually help bring the high standard product or project that you're trying to achieve. So yes, Brendan, sometimes people are not easy to deal with. It doesn't matter what sort of tool you use, because I did a human resource course. I even taught human resource back then, and one of my colleagues was a lawyer, and he was actually expert in dealing with conflicts with construction industry projects. We had all the tools, but he invited me in one of his mediation meeting. It was just so hard because people are just difficult in terms of relationship based conflicts. It's really hard to overcome those conflicts because personality issues are something that is beyond. It goes to mental, it goes to backgrounds, it goes to all sort of a different area in people personal life. So you don't know, maybe that person has an issue with his partner, wife, or husband at home. When they come in, or even kids, when they come in, they're just in completely different moods that day. It doesn't matter what you do, they will always find something to say about this. Yes, lawyers can be hard, yeah, but apparently those conflict lawyers are actually there to help with conflicts. But I found it even difficult to still to implement those mediation when they do it. I've sat in different meetings and it was still really hard to watch and really hard to see as well. So yeah, let's hope it takes time as well. But I tend usually when I have issues, whether it's with my colleagues or with my students, I tend to bring them back to the task, make sure that I move that relationship conflict to a task-based conflict because the task-based conflict will always be beneficial in some way, but trying to make sure that they focus on the task rather than their personality and bring them back to the task. So apparently, when you do a project, at the end of a project, there is a mix of emotions that comes through a team. Some of them are joyful, some of them are satisfied, some of them are relieved, some of them have a level of uncertainty. So it's the responsibility of the PM or project manager to make sure that perhaps your team feel a sense of satisfaction or relief or even joyful when they complete the task. And that will goes hand in hand with how you managing their performance as well. So in conclusion, apparently managing your human resource, it's like herding cats. So this video here on YouTube is about a cat herder. We won't watch it because my internet is not really good. So if you have time, look at that particular link. So according to a publicity done by a Fallon agency in Minneapolis, so that was a commercial or that it's called Cat Herders for IT consulting firm. So apparently herding cats is very similar to managing your human resource. How? Because like cats, you do have some cats that are solitary animals, so they don't naturally herd. They like to be on their side, do their own thing. You might have a team like that. You might have people that like to be on their side to perform their job. They don't really like to mix with others. So if you are a project manager, you have to emphasize on the need of collaboration or teamwork. So you need to have a deep-seated conversation with those people and make sure that they know the value of being part of a team. They can still have their own side or they can still have their own time or alone time doing the job. But meetings and communication across the team is something that they will need to do with others. And they will be appreciated if they contribute to that. So they're part of that collaborative environment. So cats are seemingly aloof. So sometimes you feel like they always have their mind somewhere else, just trying to drop something in front of them. They just usually jump because you feel like, oh, they're always distracted. And sometimes they sort of don't show a lot of interest. To be honest with you, cats are not my favorite pets. I had cats, dogs, birds before, all type. But I've noticed that about cats. They have those characteristics of seemingly, and if they don't just care, you feel like they don't care. Project team can be like this as well. So you have people that just don't care. They're like the work is work. When I leave work, I leave it at work. It's not my problem. And he doesn't do his job, it's not my problem. I do my part and I'm going home. Or he doesn't do this. But you have to emphasize the fact that leadership is not just a people problem. So it's not just the leader that wear the height of the leadership role, but it's also the whole team. So somehow, when you're involved in projects, you're also emotionally engaged with a team. So people have to be emotionally there as well, be able to see, to look at what the other person is going through. If they look like somehow they're not feeling well that day, already down, you can always give a supporting hand. That's being part of the team as well. So you have to obviously think about the overall projects, but think about the humans around you that are also behind that project. To be successful, they also have to be at their best. And everyone has to put something in it for the other person to feel better, to come to work as well. But cats are easily distracted. Like I said before, you throw something, a ball or a paper, they will jump. And you do have some project teams that are often like this as well. So hard for them to stay focused. They're all just distracted to do something else, either to talk about something else. And the day goes by, at the end of the day, they haven't performed. You have to bring those people back into their role and limit the way of distracting. So they have to be focused on the task. So you have to have a certain model of behavior that everyone has to focus on. Perhaps an appraisal, perhaps team performance review to make sure that they can be as distracted as they want, but they need to be focused on the task. At the end of the day, they need to provide what has been required from them. So yes, project teams are difficult to manage, particularly human resource, but there are a lot of ways that you could do that. There's a lot of talks on TED Talks about managing human resource, team building activities, and those are things that you can look into to encourage your team as well. Any questions so far? Any question on today's material? Okay, so what I'm gonna do is give you a 10-minute break, and after 10 minutes we'll come back and start. Okay, John, the assignment is due this coming Friday, I think. Yep, the 28th of January.
Sorry, Erica. On the syllabus, it says it's due in week 10. Yeah, that's why I'm just a little bit confused. Because on the syllabus, it says week 10.
Yep, just remember that the week has changed slightly because I am using some of the week material because of the public holiday and the Christmas week where I sort of gave you a bit of a break. Yeah, so the courses in terms of week 9, week 8 are not actual the week. Well, a little bit behind. Yeah, if it makes sense. Okay, so any questions? So you're saying, for example, this is week 8, but technically we're not in week 8. We had 2 sessions that we didn't do, so we are in week 10 technically. But because I had week 11 and week 12 where it's like a revision or a summary. Week 11 is a summary, week 12 is a revision. So the weeks as our material have been brought forward. So you will notice that we might not do the revision on week 11 because I will combine it with change control after. Okay, so any other questions? You will get assignment 2A results this week before your assignment 2B is due. So I started marking halfway through that now, and it will be complete in the next couple of days, and you will get your results. Okay, so it's a 10-minute break before. Okay, assignment 3 will be released as soon as you submit assignment 2B. So on the same day, because I wanted you to focus on assignments 2A and 2B before assignment 3 is released. And remember, assignment 3 is the individual assignment, but it's actually something that you have a video recording of. You have a problem, and that problem you have to explain how you will address it. Address it based on what you know about your case study or what you provide in assignment 2A and 2B. This is a way for me to test whether or not you've been involved in those 2 assignments. Because if you haven't participated, you haven't done nothing in those 2 assignments, or you don't know what's going on with 2 assignments, it'll be very hard for you to do assignment 3 because you can't guess that. It will be something that you have to be aware of what's happened earlier. Yeah. Okay. No problem. Okay, that's a good point. Atherat is asking if do they had an extension since you don't have the result of assignment 2 yet, and there's a bit of confusion with the deadline and stuff with 10. Okay, well, that's not a reason to get an assignment, but I understand that assignment 2 might be released in a couple of days, and I understand your need of having a look at how you perform for assignment 2A and trying to change some of the assumptions that you made, like in terms of cost and time before you finalize your assignment 2B. So that's actually a good point of that. So I'm gonna do a voting here. Just bear in mind that if I can only extend it by few days, not more than few days, because of assignment 3 being due as well. Okay. So for those who are here, the participant who feels like, raise your hand if you want to maintain the submission of assignment to be this week Friday. Okay, nobody? Atad, you have a question? Okay, so Lauren and Atad, I've got two people raising their hands for maintaining the submission for this Friday. Okay, Rachel, Eleanor. So keep your hands up, please. I'm just gonna count. Okay, so Rachel, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so trying to figure out first before David for how many people want to stay or submit this week. So I've got 3 out of the 13 or 12 attendees. I'm misreading myself. So what about, raise your hand if you need an extension for assignment 2B. Okay, those who previously have put their hands up, you should put it down. Okay, so we have more hands for an extension. Just bear with me. I'm gonna double check something. When I say double check, I'm seeing the calendar of when we need to finish the semester. Okay, so today's the 28th. Okay, so I've got small hands. No, Eleanor is asking if you give everyone an extension, that means the release or assignment is extended. No, assignment will still be released this week because you need time to think about what need to be dealt with. So I will release assignment 3, and while you're doing assignment 3 normally is due on the 4th of February. So that might be extended as well. But it will give you time as well. While you're doing assignment, you're looking at your performance for assignment 2A, you're doing assignment 2B to see how you will overcome or answer the issue in assignment 3, because it's really related. It's just you giving an explanation. There's no lot of work in assignment 3, but it's just a way for me to double check that you've done some work for your assignment 2A and 2B. 6th of February. Okay, thank you, David. Brendan, you have a question or just a hands up? Okay, for the hands, that's pretty much it. The majority have voted for an extension. So you have a week extension for your assignment 2B. And assignment 3 will be still released this week because you need to know what will happen. Next week, you're going to have a sort of an announcement. And that announcement is the one that will actually guide your assignment 3 submission. So you will get that. So, Lynn, you have a question? Or is it just a hands up for
So, Erica, do we only have 1 week to prepare for the 3rd assignment? Is that all? Gosh.
Yeah, it's not a lot of work. It's just a you explaining how you deal with that issue, if I make sense. And the way you record it, you can use your phone, and you can use also. I will explain to you next week because I don't want you to stress too much. I want you to focus on 2B first. You can use your phone. You can
Thank you, Erica.
yeah. So yeah, assignment 2B will be due on the 4th, which will make assignment 3 be due on the 11th. I can't go further than 11 because I need to submit the results before we start next term, which is end of February. So yes, assignment 3, 11, assignment 2B, 4th. You only have a week for your assignment 3, which is quite enough for that assignment. It's not, it doesn't require a lot of things. It's just you addressing a change or an issue. Yeah. Yes. So assignment 2B, 4th, assignment 3, 11th. I can't go past that. Just bear in mind that the result has to be entered in the system before the next semester, which starts end of February, beginning of March. So that can't be pushed further than that. Any other questions so far? So how are you going with your assignment 2B? How many of you have sort of David, can you you ask what after the break? Which break? The HR part today. Okay. So technically, oh, a 10 minute break. Thanks, David. To remind me of a 10 minute break. It was just to go through the risk management that material. That's why you needed a break or to start with risk. By the look of things, I just want to double check first. I'm having Brendan say that I've gone through the HR part today. How are other team going with assignment 2B? Okay. Especially with the procurement. Remember I was asking something about procurement. That's probably having issue with his internet. Is anyone okay with the procurement section of your assignment?
Erica,
Yeah.
some of the team members are having trouble with the procurement component. I think last week we went through those 4 or 5 different phases of procurement, where it was fixed cost, whether the unit price, whether it was guaranteed, whether it was alliance, and maybe just cover that for a couple of minutes just to refresh them of how they could apply that back to their assignment. Not necessary for me, but I'm just probably more speaking on behalf of others.
Okay, so just bear with me. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to go to Canvas and I will show you a past assignment, maybe to show you how this section should look like, because I think you're probably stressing beyond what is required from you. So just bear with me. I'll share an example so that you can see. So that will be part of the break, the 10-minute break. Instead of doing the risk, I'll try to find an example or a good example for you from the past, and then I'll go through that example. It will be recorded, so if Umar comes back, because he has a problem with his internet.
Yeah, I think he's getting ice cream for his children. They've just discovered it, so he's really enjoying that.
Okay. Okay, so got a lot of window. Just apologies for that. I am planning my wedding in a few months, so I have a lot of windows. This is here. No, it's here. Okay, so here it is. Okay, that's an example. So in this example here, that's a past assignment similar to what you have. So there was a procurement section as well, and that was the hue. So bear with me that I won't post this example just because it's quite similar to what you're doing. So that assignment to be here had the same component. There was stakeholder, human resource, procurement. So that's what is shown in the table of contents. Obviously, executive summary. Just remember, the introduction will be the same because you're describing the same project, but the executive summary will be different because the results and the component or the method that you use for this particular assignment is completely different to what you've done for 2A. Because here you have different elements in there and you have different results. So the executive summary will be different, except for the part where you give, when you start, you give an overview of your project. That's the same. But then when you talk about the method and the results found in this report, that will be different. So you can tell that this is pretty much executive summary, and the executive summary here then mention the stakeholders because that's what they've used here, human resource, and then obviously there was a bit of procurement as well because that is what is included in this particular assignment. Now, if you go the stakeholders, that's the first thing that you need to provide in communication. You need to think about your main stakeholders. Some of your cases would have them already, so you just have to mention who they are. You could start by mentioning or listing them, or you can just use the stakeholder register with their name straight away instead of listing them separately. Some students in the past, they had a list of internal stakeholders and external stakeholders first, and then they had a register after. So in this is the stakeholder management plan or the register. If I zoom a little bit, you have the name of the company, remember, the stakeholder, the position, the role in the project, not in their organization, the contact. So this is something that you would have to come up with because there is no right or wrong answer, just the main contact for that particular stakeholder. Just bear in mind that it has to be, if it's a phone, office phone, not really personal. If it's an email as well, you can sort of make up an email that is work email. Now, if you remember, the requirements here were the requirements of what is needed from that stakeholder. And the expectations was for them when they get into the project, what they need from the project, okay, what they expect from the project. They expect funding, they expect some things, so you have to specify that for each stakeholder. Now, there is a column after that of potential influence, which you would have to decide based on the power interest grid or the salience model. If you remember that week, we had two models. So the power interest grid, it was whether it's high influence, low interest, then it's high potential influence is high, or which quadrant that stakeholder fit in. Some of them will be low influence because they have low power, low interest, or because they have low power, high interest, they are low because they are in the bottom of the quadrant. And some of them will be on top of the quadrant, the two left and right quadrants, and those one will have high influence. If you use the power interest grid, if you use the silent model, you will decide as well which model or which circle that stakeholder fits in to talk about the influence. Now, the life cycle phase here is the phases of the project. Is it the initiating phase? Is it the executing phase? Is it the closing phase? And the classification here is whether that stakeholder is external or internal. External, internal to your organization. That's what you would assume. Just know for those who are doing Human City Council, which organization do you belong to and which organization that stakeholder belong to? Is it someone from your organization or is it someone that is external? And then you need to provide after this is it goes on and on and on. Okay. Just remember you're not being marked on the word count in the table. So you could develop a big stakeholder register, but it doesn't have to go through detail as of the community nearby or the community that live 20 kilometers away from that project. That become too much detail. Just focus on the main stakeholders for that particular thing. And that group of students showed where they got the potential influence from the power interest rate. If you're using the silent model, you have to mention as well where that potential influence came from the Salian model. Now the communication is the communication plan, where you would have normally, okay, they had a lot of explanation. What sort of information? So the what, how, so how often, or the method as well, and then the provider. So they use the example in the lecture slides because you can use a different way. You can start with the stakeholder, and then you can start with their detail, and then you can start with the what, how, and so on. Or you can actually, some people have merged the stakeholder register and the communication. So they took those elements because it's the same stakeholder. So they add column of what info, frequency, the methods, and the provider is them. Okay. So you have to provide a communication plan as well, and roughly explain on how regularly you would communicate with them. So it's very short description here. So that's all pretty much for stakeholder. All of those details, that was optional, so they decided to give it additional detail. The second one is resource management. So this is pretty much a human resource. I said start with your internal stakeholder. So among your internal stakeholder, and any of them would be part of your organization. If some of them you don't have them, let's say you need to hire them, you have to think about for what sort of job. So your WBS, how much you will spend on hiring them or paying them, for example, to work, and so on. So that's also optional. You can make assumptions that you will work with your internal stakeholder, then you won't have to show this. But if for some of the work that you provide in your WBS, you still have to hire externally your human resource, then you have to show if you have enough money and also enough time to hire them. So that's how you would include your costs and your time. And all of these are your assumptions. Okay, any question? I think Wendy say, okay, so the tables are not counted as words. Now the words in the table are not counted. I was worried that this is 41 pages example. Yeah, I know the students, they were a little bit overly involved in this assignment. Yeah, so let me go to finishing resource, and I'll show you procurement. So resource, human resource. The other thing that is recommended is for you to show the organizational charts of human resource. You don't have to go into hiring every single human resource, okay? You can just make an assumption that some of them will be part of your team, so it saves you money as well. And here they have the organizational charts or the VC matrix, but I recommend that you have an organizational chart to show the reporting line and the communication line. Well, you don't need to use VC matrix. They just use it to show how they will, which one is accountable and so on. But there is a point in your assignment where it's actually talking about how you would manage your human resource. You can have a short description on that. And I think the reason why they use VC matrix is to show how they will manage their human resource. So you can either show that with VC matrix, or you can just describe it verbally in terms of training, team buildings, and so on. You can even talk a little bit about the Tuckman model or any other technique that you might use to manage a human resource. Pardon me. So with the procurement, okay, I actually recommended to start with a make or buy analysis. So there's okay, no, probably not the best example to show you because they went into very, very, very high detail for each procurement. Okay, so here's the thing. First of all, it's a table of make or buy analysis. So you have your list of okay, bear with me. I'm gonna show you a very simple straightforward example. This student here were some of them were managers in some companies, so they use their own sort of scoring and all that. So that might confuse you. Just bear with me. I'm just changing example. It wasn't wrong, so they do get good mark for it. But a lot of the things that they provided were not required. So what I'll do is I'll try to find some very straightforward example for you so that you know exactly what needs to be included and you don't have to provide a lot of unnecessary work. Can you see the new screen here, or you're still seeing the old assignment? Old, okay. I'll stop sharing this and share the new one. Just bear with me. Okay, when I saw the table of the scoring, I was like, maybe that's a good example to show you because I might get student giving scoring for the tender, which is not required for this assignment. Just bear in mind that some industry have their own way of doing that, and they might use scoring for. Okay, this is actually a better example. Okay, that was the organizational chart that I say that you need to include for your human resource with the communication line. Okay, so you can have something like that instead of the RACI matrix. This is to show that your internal stakeholder and then these are the reporting and communication lines. So I'm going to skip straight away now to the procurement section. Go a little bit up. Okay, so your procurement human resource, that puts responsibility, RACI matrix, material, and let me put down Okay, so that's where you start. Okay, you start with your make or buy analysis. So your make or buy analysis is a table. You take your WBS, you have your work, trying to find out who will do the work for you. So for that particular job, would you do the job internally, make, or would you do the job externally? So they use this table here where they had the job or the role, and then they have make. So for the project schedule, they will do it themselves. The work here comes from WBS. For the site selection, they will buy. So they'll have to hire an externally or qualified expert to do this. The feasibility report, they will do it themselves. And the project charter themselves, the legal document, they will hire someone. So look at your WBS, trying to decide which one will be done by yourself and which one would you rather find someone to do it externally. So that's your make or buy analysis and when. So there is a part of your assignment that says that your procurement has to be integrated with your schedule and your cost. So that's how you show it. If it has to be done by you, when will it be done? You do have that from your time schedule that you develop already. If it has to be done externally, when will that be done as well? So the second step now, after you've done your make or buy analysis, decided that certain job will be done externally, so you have to buy or to procure, then you have to think about what type of contract. You can still have a table. Some students use for each of the work who they will procure and what sort of contract they will use. But the second step for you is to mention the type of contract. Here, what they've done here is they mentioned for each of their procurements, what type of contract. For example, the principal architect, they say they will use a guaranteed maximum price. And they explain a little bit why. And they did an evaluation of the tender. So if you do a guarantee maximum price, and you receive several answers from the tender that you will use. How will you select? So they develop a brand criteria that they might need, and they gave an example of 3 companies and how they will be assessed based on that example that we did. So this is all hypothetical. You will sort of develop this as an example. Just bear in mind that you don't have to do for every single procurement evaluation. You can do for 3 of them to show how you will select the response once you have received the answer. And then they have this procurement of the building contractor. They will use a lump sum, and they describe a little bit what sort of why they select a lump sum, and they gave the criteria in terms of the response. If we get the 2 responses from these 2 companies here, one of them is offering this, the other one is offering that. This is how we might select which one to go with. These are our criteria, these are our weighting, and they didn't have any non-negotiable. They just had percentage. Be up to you as well, and that's pretty much it. Okay, for procurement. But that's their case. They make an assumption that they will only buy principal architects and building contractor. So if you have a lot of buys, which means a lot of procurement, you might need more of those specification contracts for each of them, as well as the evaluation criteria. So any questions so far? So how are you feeling with the procurement?
Hey, Erica, Brendan here. Is it possible or not to upload this onto Canvas, or you're not allowed to put this example up?
It's because of the similarity with your assignment. What I can do is I can find another completely different assignment that's not similar to yours at all, and just give you that for the purpose of the procurement, if that's okay.
Well, I'm okay because I didn't actually do this topic, so I think if you put it up and anyone else that's done this topic, they take a 5% penalty. The rest of us will be okay.
Okay, that's a big risk, Brendan.
I'm just joking with you, Erica.
I'm sure Hume City Council is quite a popular case, even though I've changed it over the years. It's not exactly the same way it was described back then. It's quite different this year. Students tend to copy exactly the same answer and just put it down there, and they don't even realize that it's not the same description. So how about I give you step by step what is required in procurement? Okay, David, you're asking.
I'll be happy with that,
So
Erica. I'm gonna, if no one else is saying anything, I'd be very
yeah,
happy with that, Erica.
okay. So what I'll do is I'll do a form, and I'll tell you stages, one step at a time, of what is required for your procurement, or like a template, let's say. I'll even put table for you so that you can have it as a template. Contracts, make or buy analysis, and so on. Okay, so I'll do that then. It's better for me to do that. Okay, so I think David, you asked a question about so I need to specify that I need 50 meter of pipe. Can you elaborate on that, please? Okay, so where you start is your WBS, and your WBS, you have your work. Now trying to find if the work can be done by your team. If it can't, then an external organization, you need to outsource it or outsource the service. Then that will be part of your buy. If you outsource, what sort of contract would you use with them, and so on. Oh, I see what you mean. You're actually talking about in the procurement. Do I need to say I need 50 meter of pipe for your WBS 3.4.5? Okay, it's not the you can say you need 50 meter of pipe, but the question is, where would you get that? Would you get that within your own organization, or would you have to outsource it from such and such? So that's where you have to do. So it's more about where would you get that companies, even if you get it from Bunnings, okay? No, you don't need to be specific. It's more of where or which organization would you get involved for that. Just don't be confused with resources, because the 50-meter pipe is actually part of your resources. If you whether you're getting from Banning, you're just buying that. That's it. But it's actually to do the job of installing it. Would you install it yourself, or would you have an external organization come and install it? That's the question of procurement. If you can do the work yourself, yeah. So it's not a contract, isn't it? They're just give it to you a one-time thing. Is it, are you buying it, or are they installing it as well? If Bunnings is installing it, then it's procurement, because you're getting them to come and install it. But if you're just getting it, that's just resource. You're just buying from them. For the resources, you don't really need to specify the contract. Okay, let me just go back to resources with this student here, for example. Okay, I'm gonna go a little bit down. Okay, this is their WBS, as you can tell, and they are a little bit much simple. So resource estimation, okay? So they provided a table for human resource and also for material as well. So they have their task in the WBS. They require human resource, who they need to be involved, the cost of that. But they show that with their WBS, so next to it. But one of the things as well, I'm not sure if this team has done, is they haven't done it, is the resources. Oh yes, they have it. This is the table for material resources. So this is not human resources, this is material resources. They just had the WBS and roughly gave an estimation of what sort of resources will be needed overall and how much it will cost them. You can do the bill of quantity, so you can say one will cost that much, total will cost that much as well. So they've done a table for human resource and they've done a table for material resource. So the pipe is the material resource because you're just getting it from Bunnings, but you'll be installing it yourself. So the procurement is when it's more than that. It's just not just getting the material for you to do the job, but it's also getting them to come and install it. That's why you need a type of contract. That's why you need a tender and so on. So it's a lot more than that. I'm not sure if I make sense. Any question? So don't be confused with getting your resources. So your resources, you get them from any external company. You go and buy them and then use yourself. But we talk about procurement when it's more than that. They providing the resources and the services that comes with it as well. Because there will be in your project for a certain period of time. You need to establish certain type of contract. You have to establish how you work with them. So it's more than just buying a resource, but also the service that comes with it as well. Whether it's just the people, whether it's just both the material and the service. Okay, so I will make a template of step by step. What about any other sections? Are you okay with other sections, or you just need procurement? I guess it's just procurement. So I'll make a template to show you what needs to be included in procurement and post it. And you can use that as a way for you to check that you've covered all the steps required for procurement. I can quickly tell you as well, like a summary of what's required for each other section, even though it seems to be quite straightforward. For example, I would include for stakeholder register, communication plan. The only thing with stakeholder is for you to have an indication of the power, whether it's or the influence of the stakeholder. If you're using power interest grid or you're using silent, you have to mention that. And for human resource or the resources, you have to show your human resource, and you also have to show your resource table. And for your human resource, you can have a table as well as an organizational chart to show the reporting line and so on. Procurement, start with make-or-buy analysis, and then specify the contracts for each of the buy, and also you show how you will select the responses or the tender. Okay, no worries, John. And I think we might not cover risk because we don't have enough time. But risk will be covered next week along with change control. Change control is very short, so we can combine it, and that's required for your assignment 3. And also remember, for assignment 2B, we get an announcement that it has been extended. Assignment 3 will be 11th, assignment 2 will be the 4th, and assignment 3 will be released this week, regardless of the changes. Okay, so enjoy your evening. If you have any more questions, feel free to email me. And that's it for today. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you all. And we will be here next week. Thank you. Just stop the recording.